Two former Deloitte staffers have been accused of coordinating their testimony in the 25 million rand Nulane investment criminal trial. Now, in the past 2 days, members of the team, which worked on a high-level due diligence report, have testified in the state capture case. But counsel for one of the accused has asserted the firm's one-time employees put their heads together and tailored their evidence in a bid to do damage control. Let's get you more detail on that. Bring in our reporter, Erin Bates, live from outside the High Court in Bloemfontein. So, Erin, where is this alleged coordination, shall we say, in the evidence most apparent?
So, Tembekile, I must just disclose we're not outside the High Court. It has been bucketing down in Bloemfontein this afternoon, and we, in fact, have found some shelter nearby. But in terms of that testimony, we had Omri van Wyk from Deloitte yesterday, and then Herman Botha today, both former staffers at Deloitte. And at issue is their work on this high-level due diligence report, which looked at potential projects in the Free State in order to empower black farmers under the Momohuma Mobung banner. And what they've said, which certainly does sort of line up, at least where they agree, is that a version of the report which was furnished to them by the investigating officer Mandla Mtolo of the Hawks, who was involved in putting together the state's case, showed several changes and distinguishing features that, to their eyes, meant it could not be the Deloitte version of that report. This includes things like footnotes with disclaimers, also the font and the formatting of that document, and some of the provisions in that document, or sort of inclusions in that document, including, according to today's witness Botha, a bullet point about appointing an Indian company, Paras, a dairy business in India, to partner with the Free State government to go ahead with the Vrede Dairy Project as it became, or the Estina Dairy Project. Both the Deloitte witnesses who've testified in the state capture matter have said Deloitte would never have made such a recommendation because it simply wouldn't make sense to have an Indian dairy business come into the Free State government and provide input on a venture up to 1 billion rand when they don't have the insight into the dairy sector in the province, they don't have the experience, and they don't understand how that works in this province. And so that, they say, especially Botha today, led them to believe that Nulane Investments had made changes to the document and put in those additions which, on the state's case, favored the Guptas and their nefarious interests.
Dairy and fruit go together, and it's happened again in this case today.
It certainly did, Tembekile. In this case, pawpaw and yogurt. You might remember yesterday I mentioned the Dr. Pawpaw dish at Tasha's because, according to Van Wyk, he met with one of the accused, Dinesh Patel, at that restaurant, and he recalls it vividly because Patel ordered this dish. I've been told by someone who was in court today it's a very sort of fantastical spread if you do order it, and it's not just kind of light sort of culinary color to this case, Tembekile. The point is it came up again today because Botha said he too was at that meeting and he too vividly remembers this Dr. Pawpaw dish. So we've had, counsel in courts talking about Dr. Pawpaw. At one point it was misquoted as King Pawpaw, prompting chuckles from the court. But the issue here is that both witnesses from Deloitte recall this dish, although Botha claimed that it had feta in it, and that counsel for Dinesh Patel, Advocate Kenny Oldwage, used to argue that these two witnesses had effectively colluded on their version to try and pin down his client at that meeting. And he said that, this raised concerns about what discussions are happening between former Deloitte staffers behind the scenes. Botha actually disclosed that he and Van Wyk had a call last night after the prior witness's testimony, and he was encouraged to relax, stick to his statement, and just go through the motions of his appearance today. But we had Oldwage really driving home this assertion that Deloitte witnesses are working together to corroborate a version of events and do damage control.
Any interesting points that we can look forward to when the case resumes tomorrow, Erin?
Certainly. We are expecting 2 witnesses to give evidence on ABSA bank accounts and money flowing in and out of them. This marks an important moment as this criminal trial moves forward, Thembekile. Remember, this is the only live criminal trial in a state capture matter brought by the Investigative Directorate of the NPA. And this is where we start moving into that money laundering evidence, where we may see how much the state has been able to gather, what collateral it has around the Gupta's business interests and alleged front companies, and how financial flows worked. The indictment mentions RJ, Atul, and Rajesh Tony Gupta at length and talks about their role allegedly pulling financial strings. So we're starting to expect that coming from tomorrow. And Thembekile, just to bear in mind as we move into the build-up for SONA, the President has previously raised the ID and state capture cases in the pipeline as measures of ensuring good governance, measures of a supposed cleanup in the supposed new dawn. This case is looking weak in places from the cross-examinations we've seen, and we have an upcoming potential grey listing by the Financial Action Task Force, which is a global financial watchdog, which looks at things like measures against money laundering, terrorist financing, and so on. And so if the President does raise this Nulane Investments case tomorrow, keep in mind the kind of holes that are being picked in the ID's case so far as we move through the 3rd week of testimony in the Free State High Court.
Erin Bates, thank you very much from a rainy Bloemfontein tonight.